But I want to give you all the opportunity to discuss or ask questions. Now, when I say ask questions about the Bible reading revival, I'm not saying I can answer it. But I want to make that clear. But Brother Dewey can probably answer it. Brother Donnell could probably answer it. We can discuss it. So any questions or comments or something that you've noticed or that encouraged you in the Bible reading revival? Man, y'all just buzzing this morning. It's just energy's everywhere. Miss McDonough, let them bring you the mic. They want it on the CD, plus we go out on YouTube, so we don't need to have gaps in the sound.
One of the things I've noticed in my reading is this time versus other times that I have read is that when you are repentant and obedient and following God's way of life, that He shows favor to others about you.
Oh, yeah.
And the big example was, of course, Joseph.
Yeah, sure.
That God showed favor with the guards. God showed favor with the Pharaoh. God showed favor. And it's one of the things that just struck me so hard is that, you think that nothing is happening because you are, trying to follow God's laws, be obedient, and do the will of God. And you don't think that anything is happening, but God shows favor.
Amen. Amen. It would be good if God said, I'm going to bless Faith Baptist Church extra. I'm already blessing them, but I'm going to bless them extra simply because Kevin McConaughey is a member. He's so in tune with me, and he's so eager to do my will. Now, we're not talking about working to go to heaven. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about believers who know they're in the will of God, who are eagerly trying to provoke unto good works, be an encouragement, follow the directions of the Bible. And God says, I'm going to bless Faith. I'm going to give Faith Baptist Church an extra helping of blessings because Kevin McConaughey is a member there. See, God bless, she brought up Joseph. God bless, everywhere Joseph went, God blessed the people involved with Joseph, and they weren't even saved. They were pagans. They were Gentiles. And He said, I'm going to bless them for Joseph's sake. That's all. I've always enjoyed the story of Joseph. Brother Dewey?
The opposite side of that coin is Pharaoh and the nations that God destroyed before Joshua and the people. It says there that he hardened their hearts because to get them. And of course, you go back to Pharaoh, you tie that in with Pharaoh, and it was because he first hardened his heart.
Yes, sir.
And then the same with the people. And then God didn't even send Joshua and the nation of Israel in to possess the land until their iniquity had gotten to the full. So He was long-suffering and merciful, and He put up with it until they had exceeded their chances. Not they couldn't have turned around, but till they got to the point that their hearts were hardened to the point they wouldn't turn, and then He destroyed them. And so, and the other part of that would be when there's no intercessor, such as Moses interceding for the people of Israel. So there's two sides of that coin.
Sure.
One where He blesses those who follow His principles, and one where when we willfully go against His principles, we're in trouble. Can get into irrevocable trouble. And
look, I get accused of being negative and Eeyore and all that stuff. So and so I don't want to turn negative. But what he said is right, folks. See, you can't. There's two sides to it. Those that follow God's principles. Now, if you're saved, you're going to heaven regardless. If you're saved, you're going to heaven regardless. But I don't want to go to heaven like Samson did. I don't want to go to heaven like Samson did. I want to go to heaven like Paul did, or at least somewhere in the middle. I mean, at least somewhere near the Paul's end of the spectrum. So we're not talking about whether or not you're going to go to heaven. If you're saved, you are sealed until the day of redemption. What we're talking about is the blessings of God, because for all the blessings that come on people that follow God's will and word and way, for all the blessings, there are just as many curses that come on those that don't. There are just as many problems. Listen, you can't do wrong to get a chance to do right. And that's not original. That's not mine. I forget who said that. Bob Jones. It's never right to do wrong to get a chance to do right. And when you ignore, because for all the people that were blessed because of Joseph, let me give you a Bible example instead of pontificating. For all the people that were blessed because of Joseph, look at all the people that were harmed because of Achan. Listen, his whole family was killed. Not to mention the people that died in the Battle of Ai. The people that died in the Battle of Ai. And then there was one time when God told them, don't go up. Don't go up and fight them because I'm not with you. He told them specifically, don't go up and fight them because I'm not with you, and they went up anyway. I can't even fathom that. But as I sit there, I said, I wonder how many times I do that. Listen, in Numbers chapter 20, was it Numbers or no? It was Deuteronomy. I think it was Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy chapter 20, whenever Aaron died before Moses did. I didn't even realize that. I called Brother Rowan up and I said, Brother Rowan, I didn't even realize that Aaron died before Moses. I said, I've read the Bible through numerous times. He said, Brother, are you sure you're saved? Now he was joking. But Aaron died before Moses, and according to another chapter in Deuteronomy, when Aaron died, it was 40 years after they left Egypt. According to another verse in Deuteronomy, 40 years after they left Egypt, they were still saying, we wish we were in Egypt. I mean, because it kept, because every time they'd get in trouble, they'd say, we want to go back to the flesh pots and cucumbers and all this stuff. And they talked about, what is a leek? It's an onion. See, the onions just aren't that awesome. I mean, I could see if they were saying, we want Firehouse. I can understand that, or we want T-bone steaks. But they were always talking about leeks and cucumbers and whatnot. But anyway, 40 years after they left Egypt, 40 years they were still bringing that up. I wonder how often we get stuck in the past. We get stuck. Listen, people talk about, I remember when it was the good old days. Listen, it's the good old days right now. I remember when it was the good days of Faith Baptist Church. It's the good days of Faith Baptist Church right now, if enough of us decide to make it so. So 40 years after they left Egypt, they were still bringing that up. But I read some of what they do. I read some of what went on, and I wonder how guilty I am of some of that stuff. Another thing that I wondered about, I asked Brother Rowan about it last night, and maybe some of you scholars and theologians will talk about it. Aaron never got in any trouble. He never got in trouble. I mean, and I don't know how he got away with it, because I get in trouble all the time. And I've never built a calf. But Aaron fashioned that calf, built that altar. It says plainly he built the altar. People got killed over that, and not a word was said to Aaron. When Miriam was criticized, and by the way, and I don't want to open a can of worms up, but she got in trouble for criticizing the fact that Moses had married an Ethiopian woman. It says specifically that she got in trouble for being critical of the fact that Moses had married an Ethiopian. So we better be careful what we say about the racists. I'm going to leave it right there. It's not biblical to be a racist. It's not biblical. It's not right. She got in trouble because she criticized he married an Ethiopian woman. All right? She got leprosy. She got over it. But nothing. But her and Aaron, is it she and Aaron, Brother Donnell? She and Aaron were criticizing this. They were doing this together. It says that both of them were talking about it. Nothing happened to him. She got leprosy. So Aaron, I don't know how he did it, but I wish I could get there. I don't know. I don't know what connections he had, but well, that's true. But I mean, the guy seemed to dodge bullets. I mean, this guy built an altar, and then he told Moses. He said they threw the earrings in there, and the calf just jumped out. And he fashioned that calf. He built it. But listen, Aaron was God's man. Like Brother Owen said, I went to Brother Owen. He said, I don't know, brother. He said, but God knew Aaron's heart. God knew his heart. Brother Dewey, bring the mic up here to Brother Dewey, Brother Ron.
Could it have something that, I'm just asking a question now, I don't know. Could it have something to do with his position and the fact that he represented, he was a type of Christ. The position was a type of Christ, not the man.
Yes, sir. Well, I'll take it. That works fine for me. Anybody want to add to that or comment on that, Brother Law?
I was hunting the verse, I couldn't find it yet. When Moses was giving his testimony, the story later on about how he interceded for the people, he also said he interceded for Aaron. Okay.
Listen, Moses had, and now the Bible says no man has seen God at any time, and we know that Moses saw God's hinder parts, and we know that when it says a couple times they spoke face to face, it's talking about the nature of their relationship. It's talking about the intimacy of their relationship. Moses had a relationship with God that no one else, to my knowledge, has ever had. Listen, I can't imagine, first of all, I can't imagine talking audibly to God all that thundering and lightning and all, being up on that mountain. If it's anything like it was in the movie, it's terrifying. I mean, I saw the movie when I was like 8, and it was terrifying. And it had to be worse than that. I mean, that's a movie, you know. But when Moses would tell God what he needed to be doing, and several times in the book of Deuteronomy, I love the book of Deuteronomy because it recaps everything. And several times in the book of Deuteronomy, he said, God hearken unto me that time also. I'm not getting the phrase exactly right, but several times it says, God hearken unto me for your sakes also. And then he kept telling them 3 or 4 times. 3 or 4 times he told them, he said, I can't go into promised land for your sakes. And it must have been accurate because God allowed him to write it down. You know, which brings up the question, well, if it was their fault, why couldn't he go into promised land? But, you know, those are questions I try not to ask because we know that striking the rock marred the picture of Christ. We know that. But he had a relationship with God that was totally unique. And I mean, when the people needed something done, I mean, can you imagine you asking God to do something? And he does it immediately. Immediately. See, the only other person I could see that was even close to that was Elijah. Several times in the book of Elijah, it says that God hearkened unto Elijah. Or not in the book of Elijah, but in the prophetic books where Elijah's mentioned a lot. For Kings and Chronicles. Mainly Kings. But several times it says that God hearkened unto him. But I can't imagine where I ask God to do something and he does it right then. Does it immediately. They had a special relationship. Okay, anyone else before we move on? It's not going to take us too long to go through chapter 13. Anyone else? All right, I want to encourage you to read. I want to encourage you to support the church. Support the church by getting involved with the Bible Reading Revival if you're able to do so. If you're physically able to do so, I would encourage you to do that and see what the Lord does for you. And we're going to try to remember to do this the whole time the Bible Reading Revival is going on. But for right now, if there's nothing else, go to the book of 1 Corinthians. I had to memorize this chapter when I was a child. And I still know most of it, but I doubt I could quote it blind. Even though I still know most of it. Because it's been a day or two ago since I've been a child. Now, not as long as it's been for some of y'all. But it's been a while for me. 1 Corinthians 13. And if you really let these words sink in, it's quite awe-inspiring, this chapter. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and have not charity, I am become as a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy, and though I understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains, and have not charity, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. Charity suffereth long, and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked. Well, I looked up and lost my place. What verse am I in? Verse 5. Is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity never faileth, but whether there be prophecies, they shall cease. Whether there be whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away. When I was a child, Brother Ronnie Doss quoted this verse to me all the time, which is odd because when he was quoting this verse to me, I was a child. But when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as I am known, even as also I am known. And now abideth faith, hope, and charity. Faith, hope, charity. These three, but the greatest of these is charity. This chapter means a lot more to me since I've had kids. You know, I mean, some chapters we don't really mean to, but we kind of make it kind of a juvenile chapter because a lot of kids memorize it, and we just kind of, and I think sometimes that conditions us to kind of look over it, or kind of look it over and just kind of pass by it. You know, chapters like Psalms 23, this chapter. But this is a powerful chapter. I mean, and if you look at verses 1 through 3, you see the absolute supremacy of charity. Now, I know that we use love. Well, we overuse the word love anyway. You know, we say, I love steak. I love my dog. Now listen, I got nothing against pets. Brother Grant. But I don't feel the same way about if I had a pet. Thank God I don't. But if I had a pet, I wouldn't feel the same way about my pet as I feel about my wife. See, I say I love my wife, and I do love my wife, so I'm probably never going to say I love my dog, because we're using the same word, and my wife may not like that anyway. But my point is, we overuse that word anyway. We overuse the word love, you know. And I know they're synonymous, but charity is the outpouring of love. You know, you got these jaybirds. Man, I said I wasn't going to say that anymore publicly. You got these untrained individuals who get married, and they love their spouse the best they can, but they want to spend all day playing Xbox or whatever the new stuff is. You know, I don't know. Well, you can't do that. You can't do. See. When you love somebody, you're going to show it. When you love somebody, you're going to show it. But if you look at this now, look how powerful this is. It says, "Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels," that means, if I knew every language known to men and known to the angels, if there is another language for the angels, if I knew every language, how many of you in here would like to speak every single language known to man fluently? Without any effort. I mean, no effort at all, just be able to do it. Have that gift. I would. But it says here that if you can do that without charity, it means nothing. That's what it says. If you don't aspire to show others, here it is. If you don't aspire to show others through yourself the love of God, the love of Christ, then this means nothing. And though I have the gift of all prophecy and understand all mysteries. Now this gets me because I'm an educator. I like to study and teach and read. That's what I like to do. And to be able, Brother Donnell, to be able to understand all mysteries and all knowledge, that'd be something. That'd be something to be on the level of Solomon or above. But it says if you can do that, and you have all faith, so that you can move mountains, and have not charity, what does it say you are? It says you're nothing. That gives me chills. I mean, if I could have the faith to say, put 6 bedrooms on my house right now, because I don't need to move a mountain. I got no interest in moving a mountain. But if I could do something, if I could basically do miracles, and of course, then if I put 6 bedrooms on my house, I'd have to have a miracle to pay the light bill. But anyway, it says if you can do all these miracles and you don't have charity, you're nothing. See, charity is showing people the love of Christ through yourself. Listen, to do that, you got to put aside your ego. You got to put aside your own agenda. I'm 41. I'll be 42 in June, and I'll be keeping y'all up to date in case y'all want to get me anything for my birthday. I'll be letting y'all know about it. But I'll be 42 in June, and for most of my life, I've thought that the harder you were, the better. The harder you were, the better. But I'm learning, when people start thinking you're too easy on people, that's when you're on the right track. When people start discussing the fact that you don't react quick enough, you don't react fast enough, you don't react mean enough, and people start debating whether or not you know what you're doing, there's a good chance you might be on the right track. All my life I've been the guy that, listen, I was trained, pull the trigger, drop the hammer. It causes more damage than it does. I can't imagine. Now here I am. I'm sitting home all day. I do stuff. I got a lot to do actually, but I got 3 kids with me all day, and of course classes are starting back. So thank God I get to come back to class. But here I am. I'm sitting home all day. My wife's at work, and I say I love my wife. Ms. Rowan. But I don't wash a single dish. I don't wash a single dish. I don't do a single load of laundry. I don't change a single diaper. I don't make sure my kids' teeth are brushed. I don't make sure their hair is combed. I don't make sure their clothes are changed. I don't educate them. Why? Because I got manly stuff. I got manly stuff I got to do. I got to read listen, I'm a man of God. I got to study. I got to teach. I got to do all this other stuff. And so my wife comes home. Somebody's texting me. Look at that. Huh. Well, anyway. My wife comes home after working, and she's got to do all that stuff. Why? Because I'm spiritual. I got to study, and I got to read, and I got to get in touch with God. Well, let me tell you what. Let me show you what the Bible says about that. We've seen the supremacy of charity, verses 1 through 3. Charity supremacy. Let's look at verses 4 through 8. You know what I call this? I call this charity's shoes. See, charity's got shoes on it. Look at verse 4. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself. Now all those things, of course the word vaunteth means to be braggadocious and brag and publicize yourself and all your accomplishments. Suffereth long is pretty self-explanatory. I never met a whole lot of people that suffered long. Listen, I'm a member of the Short Fuse Club. And all my role models are members Some of them charter members of the Short Fuse Club. Says charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not, look at this one, is not easily provoked. You ever met somebody, you got to be careful what day you talk to them on. If they had a bad meeting at 1 o'clock and you got to meet with them at 2 o'clock, guess what? You're in for a little treat, because they're going to take it all out on you. I've been there. I've done it. Is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. So does this sound like, if somebody's expressing charity, if somebody's trying to live a charitable life, does it sound like that if the husband's able, if the husband's able, does it sound like that it would be right to do the dishes once in a while if your wife's working a full-time job? Does it sound like that'd be all right to do that? Does it sound like it'd be all right to make sure the bed sheets are washed and dried and put back on the bed? Teach your kids to make beds and teach your kids to clean their room. Of course, now when I say I do the dishes, I need to clarify. I get Johnny to do the dishes. Now I supervise. I say, now here's how we do it. And because Johnny wants to use cold water. I said, no, son, you can't use cold water. That's nasty. You got to use hot water. So I had to get him used to hot water. And we scrubbed the dishes. And you say, well, I'm just too macho. Well, I'm going to try not to be too derogatory. My head's about to explode, but I'm going to try to be. Macho men generally don't have a whole lot of sense. Now that's as nice as I can put it. See, the word, the idea of machismo, that's Hemingway's word for it. He great writer, had some issues, but secularly speaking, is a great writer. Okay, but that's not in the Bible. This is what's in the Bible. What we're reading now is what's in the Bible. I need to help my wife where my wife needs help. Now, if things ever change, and I have a full-time job rather than a part-time job, and I'm gone, if I'm gone 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 hours a day, well, I probably won't wash a whole lot of dishes. But my job is to help my wife where my wife. See, I've learned something, and I'm by no means expert. I won't even say men and women. I'll say people. People don't want to hear how much you love them if you never show them. There's things people get tired of hearing. People get tired of hearing apologies, and people get tired of hearing them. People get tired of hearing you say they love you, unless you show them. So charity has shoes on it. Verses 4 through 8, we see charity's shoes. We'll read it again. Charity suffereth long, and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. In other words, I'm not too proud to do a load of laundry, or in most cases, cut the grass, take out the garbage, trim the dog's toenails if you do that sort of thing, which to me is insane. But if you do that sort of thing, you're not too proud to help and help others wherever you need help. See, my wife told me one time, she's not in here, but she'll probably hear about this because y'all usually tell her, somebody does. She said, you got time for everybody but me. Well, and now my wife's not what you call a real manipulative individual, so she wasn't trying to tell me that as far as I know, because I rarely know. I think I know what she's thinking and she surprises me. But she doesn't tell me that sort of thing to try to get me to feel bad. I mean, I'm busy. I've got things that have to be done. But my first priority is to my wife. My first priority is to my wife. And if you got a different view, you can come and tell me, but I really don't want to hear it. My first priority is to my wife. See, charity's not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own. well, I'm too macho to do this, or I'm too macho, or listen, I'm a man of God. Listen, a man of God doesn't take Clorox wipes and wipe out the garbage can. I got to be studying Greek and Hebrew. I got to be doing all this high-level stuff in my office. Well, that's fine. You can do that. But that's not what this is saying. It's not saying neglect one to do the other. It's charity does not behave itself unseemly, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoices not in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. Beareth all things. It's hard to bear all things. It's hard to bear all things. I got ready to make some stir fry yesterday and I didn't have any onions. Well, you know, we're bad about forgetting. I'll just say, I'll be real safe and say we. We're real bad about forgetting stuff and leaving stuff out, and then you'll smell something and you'll be like, well, there it is. We found it. And I said, man, where are the onions? I want my stir fry. I got to try to eat healthy. And then I remembered that she used all the onions to make chili. So I made stir fry without onions, and today I'm going to go home and eat chili. My point is, bear all things. Bear all things. Is what it says. Beareth all things. Now, this is where I want to stop. I have no idea what this means. I do have an idea, but I'm not real confident in it. What does it mean, believeth all things? Not supposed to believe all things. What does that mean? Okay, but that's not what it says. It says believeth all things. Anybody ever notice that? Anybody ever wonder what that meant? Okay. See, it says here, believeth all things. What part am I in here? Verse 7. It says believeth all things. And there's a phrase down there that kind of explains it. I'm trying to find it. Let me see here. I think it's tied to hopeth all things. Here's the way. Now I gave y'all a chance to define it. Y'all didn't do it. So here's the way I'm going to define it. When it says believeth all things, you believe in people. You believe in what people can be. And I think it's tied to hopeth all things. Rather than being negative, rather than always assuming, well, he's going to fail miserably. It's just going to be a disaster. Lord help him. Rather than being negative, you really are hoping and believing that he'll get in the book, or she will get in the book, find what they need, and be successful. Now, remember, I gave y'all a chance to define it. So that is my hypothesis about what it means. Brother Kevin Adderby, bring the mic. And brother Grant, didn't you have your hand up? Okay, brother Kevin Adderby.
When it says believeth all things, is it safe to say have faith in all things?
Well, we could say that, but then again, I don't. We're not supposed to have faith in all things, and so we're supposed to have faith in the book. So my confusion comes from the phrasing of believeth all things, and I'm not necessarily satisfied. It may well mean what you said, but I'm not necessarily satisfied with my definition. But I really think that it's tied to hope with all things. But you know, anybody else want to comment on that? Miss Kelly.
I don't think you can separate this verse. I think it's every bit of it is tied together, plus the next verse, charity never faileth, in 8. But I think we have to believe in people, we have to believe in the good things, we have to hope for the best things, and of all things we have to endure when it doesn't come out like we think it's supposed to be.
Yes, ma'am. I think that's a good way to put it.
They are all tied together.
But these are charity. So number 1, verse 1 through 3, Brother Joe Jones.
I don't know if it would relate, but what if you reverse this order and put the woman in this place and put yourself to the side, and you're the one that won't help with the dishes, won't do anything to tend the house, whatever. You're macho man. And would the woman also fit in that category?
Possibly. I mean, I really don't know. But number 1, we have charity supremacy. That's verses 1 through 3. And then in verse 4, as we've been looking at, we have charity shoes. And then in verse, that's 4 through 8. And then in verse 9, we have charity son. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect is come. See, right now we don't know everything. God gave us a book, and this book tells us of His Son. This book is His final revelation. Hebrews chapter 1 says He's spoken to us in these last days through His Son. And then Christ is the Word. So we don't know everything. But when that which is perfect is come. Whenever Christ takes the church out, and then the lost to go through the tribulation period, of course there'll be people saved during the tribulation period. Then we have the millennium. Then we're going to spend eternity in the New Jerusalem. And see, when that gets here, I'm going to know why it had to be this way. But it's all, my point is, there's more to it than what I just said. But my point is, that's all possible. That's all possible because of His Son. That's why it's so important to know who His Son is and trust His Son as your Savior. Because that's all possible because of His Son. Then you get into verse 11. And I used to say, what in the world is this verse doing in this chapter? But when I got a little older, it says, when I was a child, see, that's why I kind of steered this toward marriage a little bit. Because of this verse. It says, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. But when I became, there's a lot of, as Brother Ronnie used to say, there's a lot of banty roosters strutting around, and they're not men. They're still boys. They're not men because the Bible says, when I became a man, I put away childish things. Listen, Carson wants to do whatever Carson wants to do. And if he don't want to clean the room, he don't want to clean the room. You know why? Because he's a child. He's a child. But it says, when I became a man, I put away childish things. See, me, adults, I told my sons just this morning, I said, adults know I'm going to do what I need to do instead of what I want to do. I'm going to put aside my ego, and I'm going to do the dishes, or cook the meals, or clean the house, or take out the garbage, or cut the grass, or do the taxes, or whatever it may be. I'm going to stay on top of things. I'm going to handle my responsibilities and do what I need to do instead of what I want to do. That's why this verse is in this chapter. This is verse 11 is charity sacrifice. See, men ought to look like men. Men ought not look like teenagers, 20 years past their prime, trying to look cool. Men ought not look like that. Men ought to look like men. They ought to dress like men. They ought to act like men. It says, when I became a man, I put away childish things. So verse 11, we have charity sacrifice, and we got to shut it down. We got to shut it down. But this chapter really has helped me. It's convicted me because I've complained about certain things I had to do, and I've had the wrong perspective, and it's harmed my ministry because my marriage is my ministry. My marriage is my ministry. All right, I'm going to ask Brother Rob Donnell, if you would, sir, to stand and close us in prayer.